Welcome to the second part of Allostatic Load with Brent Bartel. If you missed the first episode, I really would encourage you to go back and listen to it. But basically, what we talked about was the understanding of the science and the story behind allostatic load. We talked about how allostasis is in the body and it's the body's ability to adapt, constantly adjusting to keep us alive and functioning. And when those adaptive responses don't get a chance to settle, then they start to communicate, creating what we call an allostatic load. And we just explored many layers that contribute to that load, like chronic psychological stress, unresolved trauma, relationship dynamics, caregiving roles, environmental exposures, even the way we fuel and care for our bodies. And this is just a continuum. The more demands we place on the system without enough recovery, the heavier that load becomes. So in the second part, we are going to move into how this shows up in real life, what we can do about it, and why we should even care. So listen in. Welcome to Burnout Solutions. My name is Mona Tippett. I am a registered nurse, a life coach, an emotional resiliency expert, and a mom. I love to help healthcare workers and caretakers and just busy, capable people understand their brain and nervous system so stress, overwhelm, and frustration do not run their life. Here on this podcast, we break down burnout, emotional overload, and survival patterns in simple human language. I love to give you practical ways to feel safer, calmer, and more present in your everyday life. You do not need fixing. What you need is support and a nervous system that knows that it's safe. Thanks for being here.
Can we talk just for a few minutes? And I think the important part of this conversation we do about this. And, I wish it was just like, well, you know what the cure for this all is? To really decrease your allostatic load, put yourself in a perfect plate of allostasis, is eat a nectarine and increase your vitamin D intake. But unfortunately, like so many things,
We're that easy.
yeah, we're complex systems. And obviously it's all multifactorial, like I mentioned. So are the resolutions. And so are the interventions, ways to get us back to a greater sense of equilibrium and balance. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But let's just talk about some of the symptoms.
Yeah.
So this is the measurable signs of wear and tear. And this reflects dysregulation across multiple interlocking systems. Not one of them is diagnostic, but if you had a cluster of them, or like, hey, check. Maybe again, it's an opportunity to create some awareness and maybe have some ensuing conversations. So I won't do too much of a deep dive into this, but this is some stuff that we see maybe, these are biomarkers. So maybe you would see this in a blood test, and this would be in conjunction with a medical health provider. But, just things like, and everybody should be doing this, just elevated blood pressure and resting heart rate. Yeah, if you have an increasing resting heart rate over time, that's indicative of something. There's some kind of load on the body happening there. Obviously, elevated blood pressure can represent a whole set of challenges. High triglycerides indicates metabolic stress, often from high sugar processed foods. Low, HDL is the good cholesterol, right? HDL helps repair blood vessels. Low level means impaired repair capacity and things like that. Glucose. I personally think that, everyone obviously should know what their A1C number is. The glucose number is nice. It should be under 100. But knowing what your A1C, which is an average of blood sugar over the course of 3 months, and probably even more so, and this isn't really common, Mona, I don't think quite yet, but is elevated fasting insulin. Because this whole notion, another podcast, different time, but this whole notion of insulin resistance as a baseline problem from which so many maladies kind of emanate, whether it be, neurodegenerative diseases or cancer or cardiovascular problems, so many of them start at this level of my pancreas just produces too much insulin. At some point, my cells become resistant to processing and using the insulin.
Right. So our body has to make more because it
Yes.
thinks that's secure. Yeah. And I heard that most people have pre-diabetes for about 7 years before it's diagnosed. Have you heard similar?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have heard similar things. And yet, because things are happening inside the body that often don't get detected, can be detected, we have the technology now. Sometimes it just is borne out in a simple blood test. But often we just don't get those results and then act on them. Can I just add the same is true with, it's interesting, like autoimmune diseases, depending on kind of who you read, but autoimmune diseases have like a stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Stage 1 and 2 are often just things happening inside the body.
And we don't really know.
Exactly. Yes. We are asymptomatic and we don't know. And we think everything, but all the it's like the root system. It's putting down this immense root system. We can't see anything above the surface, but you get maybe to a level 3 and then you're symptomatic. Then I'm like, why do I have this unabating fatigue? Or what is this rash that go on? Why do my joints hurt all the time? And you're thinking, it just came on suddenly. The reality is, it's been evolving inside the body probably for years and years.
Yeah.
But again, we weren't aware. Other things that you might see, you might talk to your doctor about, like C-reactive protein is a wonderful marker for systemic inflammation, which we see so much in the literature anymore about systemic inflammation and how challenging and what a problem that can be. Cortisol levels. We talked about that. Your cortisol should be high in the morning. I've taken cortisol tests before. It's just a saliva test. Because if your cortisol rhythms aren't working as they should, that can be a sign certainly of how high allostatic load and really impair the quality of one's life in terms of energy production and that kind of thing. Low sex hormones can be indicative in a clinical sense of the load, testosterone, estrogen, things like that. When you're in this state of stress or excess load, the body just, shunts resources away from reproduction. We don't need to produce those anymore. That's out of the question. We're just in survival mode. We're not worried about reproduction at this point. So you see the decrease in the level of those hormones. And nothing good happens when we go below range with those hormones. And there's other stuff. Those are kind of the basic, low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
The basic blood test you can look at and have that conversation going. Yes, get those checked. Let me talk about the more things that are perhaps a little more closer to home. And this is the lived experience of a high allostatic load, the symptom profile.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like and feel like in my life? How do I know? Those symptoms: fatigue, non-restorative sleep. I wake up tired as I went to bed, and you just never feel like your battery charges. Like, it's so funny. Like, my Apple Watch said I was in bed for 7 hours and 52 minutes, but I don't feel like I've slept.
Or maybe when you are in your bed sleeping, you're not actually sleeping.
Right.
Right? You're waking up several times, or you're in a thought pattern that makes you mad.
Yes,
Or you're
absolutely.
just not sleeping. I used to be in a pattern of waking up every night between 2 and 4 a.m. And that, honestly, since high school, that was just
Yeah.
my routine. That's why I was an early bird and got up, not because I really chose to, but my brain would wake up my body. Not anymore. I'm so happy. I sleep so much better now.
Good for you. I just thought it was
Yeah.
because those cows needed milking on the dairy farm, but
My
that's
dad did that.
oh, bless him. That is a really common issue, though. And you're right. It's not so much how many hours did I get horizontal in my bed. It's what was the quality of my sleep. Get into REM sleep. Did I get into slow wave, stage 4, when the body rejuvenates, where it starts moving away all the cellular debris from the brain. If we don't get in those deep levels of sleep, we tend to build this debris up over time. And that adds significantly, I think, to the load. Unexplained aches and pains. If I have a ton of muscle tension, joint pain, frequent headaches, that can be a sign of chronic inflammation, nervous system tension, gut issues, and who doesn't have some of these? But
Yeah.
if we have more of them than our share, IBS, bloating, food sensitivities, that kind of thing, that can be an expression of an excessive load. Frequent illness, that's normal. How many times you get sick in a year? Sometimes people say, if you're getting sick more than twice a year, maybe that's something to look at. And I think that's very individualistic,
But
but
like you said, and I do believe when we have a budget of 100, going back to your analogy, and our body just trying to maintain all of the systems that it's working with, if it's already at 50%, I feel like the immunity cannot catch up to fight off a virus because it's running so thin in every system. And so you get sick more often.
completely agree. Yes, because we have an impaired immune system, and obviously it's just not as good.
Yeah.
And it's fighting the good
It's not as
fight.
strong. Yeah. It's not as strong because it's repairing our body and all of its systems instead of building up the defense against the
Right.
viruses.
Yes, absolutely. So other things, weight gain, especially around the abdomen or inability to lose weight, that can be driven by very high cortisol and insulin levels. Changes in appetite can be symptoms or indicators. Often we want high sugar food. I mean, even when we're not teenagers, we can have these cravings. If people say, I just crave, ice cream all the time. Why is that? Palpitations, feeling wired. Look, if I'm going to give a speech to 200 people, I should feel a little wired. That's allostasis. But if I don't, and I'm sitting at home trying to watch Netflix and I'm still wired and I still feel amped up and I can't come back down, obviously that's not normal. Brain fog, difficulty concentrating, memory lapses, forgetfulness, increasing levels of forgetfulness. That can be indicative of the load. And I'm sure my wife will listen to this, bless her heart. But I've seen that more of late with her. As her load is increased because of the intervention's involvement with her mother, she's my gosh, I feel like I have pregnancy brain. I can't remember anything. And where did I put that? And even word finding and stuff like that. And it's a temporary thing. But it's just the body's survival mechanism. And the fact that she's got so much going on and the load is heavy right now, you know. Some of the other things don't work quite like they normally work. What else? Like emotional reactivity or numbness. Big reactions to small things. Maybe it's a 2, but I reacted an 8.
Yeah.
Seemingly small provocations meet with really dramatic responses or reactions. That can be indicative of allostatic load, anxiety, rumination, irritability, impatience. I think this is interesting too. Loss of motivation. You ever heard the term? It's Anhedonia.
No.
It just simply means that we feel emotionally numb. I've read more about it in the literature in the last couple of years, but it's feeling flat or unmotivated, like things that used to bring me joy. You like to mountain bike, right?
Yeah. Still do.
Yeah. So for people, things that do bring me joy and deep levels of satisfaction don't as much. I don't have the same kind of emotional experience when I'm doing these kinds of things.
Yeah.
I feel more numb. My affect is more flat. And
Yeah.
that can certainly mean that our load is excessive because it's connected to dopamine depletion. In fact, all of those happy drugs, the happy, what should we call them, hormones,
Hormones. Yeah. Happy hormones.
yeah, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and, well, help me out, what's the first one?
Oh,
Endorphins. So all of those can be depleted. And obviously that changes how we feel and how our feeling brain functions.
well, and how you show up in life.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, I talk about this with polyvagal theory all the time. That's dorsal vagal shutdown. And unfortunately, when you're in that zone, it's I can't and I don't care. And I don't care that I don't care.
Right.
And it's really hard to get out of that because that kind of sets a foundation for all of your thoughts and your behaviors because the lens that all of your experiences and thoughts pass through is that state.
Yes. Yeah, you're right there. I had that coming out of my brain next. Withdrawal and isolation from friends, feeling overwhelmed, unable to cope with things that used to be able to cope with, procrastination and avoidance. Some of us we're just skilled, artful in the craft of procrastination, but sometimes we were just so overwhelmed, I just can't do it. and it's indicative of other things. There's a lot more there, but I tell you what, can I just summarize it in terms of just a little assessment checklist?
Yeah. Let's talk about how would we know if we have a
Yeah,
high allostatic load besides having those symptoms? Like, is there anything we could ask ourselves or
sure. Yes. And this is kind of
right?
just a distillation of what we just talked about, but more in kind of and then, like I said, it's not just yes, no, but to what degree. But so, do I wake up tired even after a full night's sleep? Do I get sick more than twice a year? Do I have persistent digestive issues, aches, or tension? Have I gained weight, particularly around my midsection, without a clear change in diet or routine? That would be more based on the body. In terms of mind and mood, is my brain often foggy, making it hard to focus or remember? Do I feel emotionally brittle, either quick to tear up or anger or feeling numb? Do I feel a low grade anxiety or sense of dread much of the time? Do things I used to enjoy in life feel like a chore anymore? Don't give me the satisfaction they used to. So, in terms of energy and behavior, do I feel like I'm running on empty, relying on caffeine or sugar to get through the day? Have I withdrawn from friends, family, or activities I love? Am I procrastinating more and struggling to start or finish tasks? Is my sleep schedule erratic or is there poor quality there? And lastly, and I think this is kind of the key, is after a stressful event, it could be a hard day, it could be a difficult conversation, it could be somebody's road rage, it could be a really intense workout, something positive. How long does it take me to genuinely feel calm and back to baseline? Is it minutes? Is it hours? Is it days? Or do I never feel like I'm in baseline? I think one of the challenges, Mona, is then what happens is we start to just interpret this different baseline as normal.
Right. Yep.
This is just my life. My gut hurts all the time. I
Uh-huh.
have diarrhea. I feel anxious and stressed.
Mhm. I never sleep.
I never sleep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this just becomes
Or
a profile.
yeah, or it's just because of this job that I've had for 20 years.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I retire, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Things
Yeah.
like that.
I only got 10 more years of this and I'm going to be great. We're coming out the other side. I think that is such an important point because sometimes we just endure these things. This is what life is for me. And not really recognizing because sometimes the farther we get away from baseline and more normal functioning, the less we remember what it was like.
Yeah. Yeah.
What it was
We
like.
forget what feeling good feels like. Sometimes we don't know how to make that change to get there. And or once we do make the change and we feel good, then we're like, wow, I felt that bad. And that's what I felt like was my normal,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes. A bad metaphor and overused, but it's the person who has maybe impaired vision who gets glasses. And they're looking at that tree going, that's just not a big fuzzy green thing. Those are individual leaves on that tree. So we can
Yeah.
distinguish life a little differently. Well, we can see better. But yeah, you said it really well. Often we just don't know how bad we feel until we can get back to feeling good again. And I just think we need to have hope in the process, knowing that, look, bodies are complicated and we're talking about a lot of stuff, but that's okay. We just start with baby steps. And baby steps compounded over time can really make a difference in the quality of this life experience we have.
Yeah, for sure. And small, just like you said, small, tiny, consistent changes over time add up. And often it's not until we are ahead that we can look back and see the change.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I've heard you speak of this before. Sometimes it's the opposition that gives us clarity. You know, if we
Yeah.
didn't have bad days, we wouldn't appreciate good ones. We don't want to be sick for prolonged periods of time, to know what health feels like.
Yeah.
But at the same token, we shouldn't be willing to stay in these places because there really are ways that we can improve things.
Yeah.
And
Well, should we talk about a few of those?
let's do. I think, yeah. I mean, I think this is, I think, the really important part of the conversation. It's taken a few minutes to get here. establishing some kind of foundation. But this is the therefore what. So what do we do if we talk about in terms of reduction and management? I don't know. There was a statistician. He was actually a polymath. He was good at a ton of things. His name was Pareto. He lived in Italy, but he coined this Pareto law, and probably a lot of people have heard of it. It's kind of that 80-20. He found in Italy that 20% of the people held 80% of the wealth. Well, then he and colleagues and other people started looking at this pattern and found out that in so many things, nature, business, economics, that 80% of the results flow from 20% of the activities. I don't want to get too in the weeds over that, but I think there's some application here because he talked about the trivial many and the vital few. Overwhelm is it's a very real thing. I've felt it way too much in my life. So being wise and recognize we can't do all the things, but what are the vital few things that I can do, that I can start doing now, that are proximal and available to me to start moving the needle, metaphorically speaking, to start taking stuff out of the back of the truck and lightening the load a little bit. You may be able to change the moisturizer, but that may not be nearly as significant. Maybe that's a trivial mini. That's not as significant as let's work on my sleep, hygiene. Maybe let's put my phone down and I will not go to bed for the next 3 nights with my phone in my face. So it's these kinds of things, and recognizing some things are more catalytic and some things are more fundamental in terms of change than other things, clearly. So let's just go through maybe a few quick
The most important ones. Yeah.
Yes. Sleep hygiene. Can't talk about it enough. It is such a big one. It's non-negotiable. It's where the brain clears all the metabolic waste. It's the stress hormones reset. It really needs to be prioritized. And sometimes we think it's just a natural thing like breathing. For a lot of us, it doesn't seem very natural. Like you said, those are waking up at 2 o'clock or those did never get good sleep. It doesn't seem natural at all. So giving time and attention, to that, I think is really important. Movement. This comes back to a lot of the real basics, the self-evident basics, but regular moderate exercise is a powerful modulator. It changes the body's stress response system to be more resilient. It really does. And if you're in an overdrawn situation, or if you feel like you have a lot of load, allostatic load, be careful. You don't need to be doing the hits, those high intensity workouts and things like that. Go out and walk the neighborhood. Listen to some music while you do it. Things like that. So be wise. But movement, I think, is non-negotiable as well, to the degree that we can. Right. Nutrition, anti-inflammatory diets tend to stabilize blood sugar. And you do a week-long symposium just on that. Direct nervous system regulation. And these are more kind of interventions. Like when I do feel really dysregulated, or when I know I'm carrying a load that I don't want to be carrying, or I'm not returning to baseline. Diaphragmatic breathing. I've heard you talk about this before on the podcast, and we've had conversations about this.
Yeah.
It's one of the fastest ways to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, to get us out of sympathetic.
Yeah.
It goes without saying that so much of the load puts us into sympathetic, and we kind of stay in that place when there's no need to stay in that place. I love things like, I'm sure you have your favorites, Mona, but I like 4-7-8, Andrew Weil. Then 4, hold 7, exhale 8.
Yep.
Yeah. Box breathing. They started as Navy SEAL breathing. Sounds kind of fun. It's just 4-4-4. 4. Just like a box. Yeah. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4.
Yep. Repeat.
And just repeat. Yeah. Alternate nostril breathing I find really interesting. And there's a ton of others, but just breathing. If you can remember none of this, don't worry about it. Try this. Exhale for twice as long as you inhale. Inhale for 3, exhale for 6. Now, you're probably not going to do that when you're running up a mountain, but when you're sitting, 5 minutes of a breathing practice can make a profound difference in terms of biochemistry of the body.
Or anytime you're at a red light.
Yes.
Relax your body. Diaphragmatic breathe.
And it's free.
Don't check your phone.
Yes. Do not check your
Habit
phone.
stacking.
Yeah, exactly. Because then the person behind you gets really irritated when you set 10
Yeah.
seconds for a green light. But that one's an easy one. That was just an easy one. Yeah. Vagus nerve
Yeah.
toning.
What else? Oh,
You could teach me
yes.
about that.
Vagus
Yes.
nerve toning. Yes. Cold plunges.
Cold
Or
plunge.
or just putting your like a cold pack on your neck or your
Yeah.
hand in cold water or washing your hands in cold. Our
Yes.
vagus nerve is very receptive to temperature change and cold, especially cold.
I prefer that one. Yes. Not a big immersion guy. But heat therapy too. I have an
Yeah.
infrared spa. That goes down to the mitochondrial cellular level. I sit in that multiple days a week.
Yeah.
Interesting vagus nerve turning, just things like singing. I'm a terrible singer. I'm telling my wife I am toning my vagal nerve. So it doesn't have to be beautiful. I just have to do it.
Yeah.
Humming, singing, those kinds of things.
Gargling, even.
Yeah. Yes, gargling. Uh-huh. Who knew? It's wow, I can do those things. I can breathe deep. I can sing, right? Mindfulness and meditation. I've become I'm not good at it, but I'm a believer in it.
Yeah.
And I have a consistent habit of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how you can get out of your amygdala, back into your prefrontal cortex, and just everything can slow down. We have these monkey brains, and so much of it is just a casualty of the world we live in. But to be quiet, quiet on the outside is fun. I like that. And some people have a difficult time finding quiet on the outside. But how much more challenging to find quiet on the inside? And so I find that to be
It's
really helpful.
it's definitely a practice that takes practice.
It does. Yes, said it does. And it's hard because the first time you're going, I went 4 seconds without a thought popping in my brain. That's okay. That's okay. Keep doing it because next time you'll go 7 seconds and then maybe you'll go 17 seconds. And you're right. It is a process. We need to be patient with ourselves. I love these, just like nature immersion. They call it forest bathing. It looks a little different down here. Obviously, me standing by a saguaro cactus doesn't necessarily have the same kind of therapeutic benefits. But to be in nature, and this isn't just like it's a cool suggestion. There's good science that supports this kind of stuff. That it lowers cortisol, blood pressure comes down, sympathetic activity comes down. A new thing that I'm reading much more about anymore is blue therapy, which is scientifically proven to calming influence of blue spaces. If you can be by a canal, a river, a stream, a lake, the ocean, to some degree, even man-made things can be helpful, but particularly naturally occurring bodies of water. And the studies they're doing relative to that and the benefits it has to the body are amazing.
Well, but that also makes sense because so many people are drawn to the ocean when they feel stressed or when they have something to, you know, think over, ponder. Water is a
Yeah.
good place. And, all of the soothing sound CDs are ocean
Yes.
and
Yeah.
river and
Absolutely.
water-based sounds. So, yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
I'd rather be in the ocean probably than almost anywhere else on the planet. And even it can be the San Diego gray, mean, kelpy, cold ocean. But I know my mindset changes profoundly when I get in the ocean or even around the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
Cool. What
Let's talk
else?
about a couple others. So cognitive and social strategies. And you've talked a lot about these in your podcast. It's what we do as coaches, reframing and cognitive reappraisal. It really is. So much of life and our reality as we create it is driven from the beliefs and the stories that emanate from the beliefs. We know that. And working with a coach or therapy to change the narrative around stressors, just to reinterpret. I have this thing that sits on my board, and it says on my whiteboard, facts are always neutral and meaning is never inherent. So to grow our capacity to decide what meaning I will give the events in my life is so powerful and transcends so many things. It is the stuff of what our reality is made of. Setting boundaries. I think this is a big one too. I've worked with clients before that we have no therapy sessions. And sometimes just saying yes when we just, because of whatever reason, social pressure, insistence, the lack of courage, whatever, can be really detrimental to our peace of mind and to high functioning. So learning to be able to say no considerately, courageously. When I would work with the Covey Institute, we talked a lot about win-win, and it's really easy to go for lose-win. People that are high on consideration and sometimes a little lower in courage, it's hard. The considerate part of us wants to say yes. Or it's part of our identity that I help, I do, I'm there for people. And I would imagine that caregivers perhaps can fall into that just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the one who always says yes.
Yeah,
Or like I'm the one who steps in because that's how I am. And a lot of identity is associated with that. And yeah. But it's also people pleasing, you know.
it is.
It's
Yeah, that's a great point. It really is. And it's this repeated sense of self-betrayal,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
because we're not standing up. It's not a win for us. It was a win
Mhm.
for the other person, but it wasn't a win for me. And the more you go for lose win, the weaker your will becomes, the more you can feel stressed about it and other things that aren't very helpful. Cultivating secure relationships. Social connection is such a buffer. I've heard you cite the Harvard study, which is really, I think, brilliant. It would be 70, 75 years now. And what's one of the biggest predictors of overall human happiness?
Yeah, strong relationships, strong personal relationships.
Yes, strong relationships and our inherent need to belong and
Yeah.
connect. It's interesting. I've studied blue zones, centenarians, people that live to be 100 years old. And whether it be in Sardinia, Italy, or Okinawa, Japan, you look at these places and these people have these robust kind of rituals in community. They sit on the porch and their kids throw, little rocks at each other and they just chat or they join each other for meals and they do all the things. But so much of what they do is in community.
Yeah, which our phones have really affected that social norm to be not the norm anymore.
Yes, yes. And when we have these kind of relationships, it produces oxytocin. Oh, delicious. I wish we could just get an oxytocin smoothie
Yes. Yeah.
because that is the one that it feels so delicious in the body.
Yeah.
It's those feelings of love and affection and connection. Having pets. I have two
Yeah. Pet
dogs, 10
therapy.
chickens. Yeah, and I have 100-pound tortoise. Now, I don't know if I get a lot of oxytocin from Tank, but honestly, though, there's something powerful about just being with an animal, cuddling up next to your dog on the couch or on the floor, you know, can release oxytocin into the system
Yeah.
and endorphins and other kinds of things that we really like. Getting to the end of it, let's see. Can you think of any others? Oh, and I love this one too. So, finding awe in meaning. I think this is really transcendent. It's interesting. There's this whole burgeoning kind of science around awe. What is awe? A-W-E, awe. It's an emotion, actually. And there's something when you're just in a sense of awe, whether you're looking over the Grand Canyon or when you're looking at a sleeping baby or whatever it may be, a snowbank, I don't know. But these things engender within us, evoke this sense of wonder and almost spirituality, and it can profoundly shift our perspective and reduce perceived stress. They're measuring people that feel more of the sense of awe, and they're measuring lower levels of inflammation, lower cortisol levels, reduced depressive kind of episodes, and things like that. Once again, if you get some blue space, you're probably going to feel some awe. If you're forest bathing, you're probably going to feel some awe.
Yeah. They go together.
Yeah, they do go together. They do go together. There's others. And I know probably should not be a 4-hour podcast. I'm hoping that we hit
Covered
on
it.
some more important parts of it. That what is it? Causes it? What does it look like? How do I know if I have it? Or how much of it do I have? And then what do I do about it, essentially? And it's not just allostatic load, the things we talked about in terms of these recommendations, these are whole life interventions.
Right. Well, and really practices to incorporate and change those predictive patterns into healthier predictive patterns to help us with that allostatic load. Make it a practice to complete that stress cycle. Make it a practice to check the environment, the products that you have. Make it a practice to eat 30 different things, a variety of foods each week.
Yeah.
Did you say 30 plants? So not even 30 different things, 30
It's
different
actually
plants.
30 different plant foods a day.
Ah, a day.
Okay,
Oh
no, no,
gosh.
just kidding. No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
like really?
No,
A
actually,
week.
it's yeah. I mean, if
No.
you could do it within a week, that would be fabulous. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And sometimes it's just I sprinkle nutmeg, cinnamon, and ginger in my smoothie. Boom, I get three right there. I put rosemary on salads and stuff like that. I get an extra. I get a bonus. And all of those things are good for you. It may not be as intimidating as it actually feels.
Well, that's how you make reliable changes is just doing small things. Small things that added up. And we've talked about this. Make big results in the long term. So,
Yes. It is the very nature of coaching is where you at? Where do you want to be? And let's talk about how we get there.
mhm.
And hopefully we've touched on some of that today. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is about doing. I have heard that I have grand intentions often that just never get made into reality. I often tell my clients, we're not doing it all. We're not doing a lot. We're just going to do a little. And we're just going to start with a little. So check a couple things off and let's do those things. Um, I'll close with this, and I'm stealing this from Dr. Covey. Actually, he stole it from Aesop a very long time ago, but I like the fable. I think it's pretty instructive. But it was the goose and the golden egg. A farmer and his wife, poor. They go out one day. There's a goose, and next to it is a very shiny egg. It's like, what is this? Looks at it. It's heavy. Goes into town. Gets an assayer to look at it. It's pure gold. Can't even. You believe that? Every day, this goose lays a golden egg, and they get wealthy. They get fabulously wealthy. And in that wealth, they become somewhat greedy and avaricious. And instead of waiting day by day for one egg to appear at a time, the farmer decides he wants all the eggs at once. So he lops off the head of the goose, as macabre as that is, reaches in to get all the eggs at once and finds, of course, none. And one of the correlations, at least, is that if we look at ourselves as the goose, that part of our job is to, maybe job one, is to preserve the health, the happiness, the vitality, and the capacity of the goose. Because we all produce
Absolutely.
golden eggs. You produce golden eggs as a coach, as a podcaster, as a mother, educator, nurse. Maybe you have a community role. Maybe you have a church role.
Yeah.
We have all these different we need to produce eggs in all different kinds of areas. And increasing the strength of the goose by often eliminating the load off of the goose increases our capacity just to live full and abundant lives and also be that for other people in relationship.
Yeah. I love that. I love that metaphor. Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, we have talked all about allostatic load. Do we want to talk about how people can find you, or should they reach out to me?
You know what? I will, yeah, we're revamping the website. And so a more
Okay.
preferred version should be available soon. But as of this day, it is not. You can just link my email address in the show notes if you'd like to do that. And yeah, love to have conversations with people just around kind of
Everything. You're so
everything.
good.
Yeah. But just the joys of transformation and living a life that feels joyful. Not all the
Yeah.
time, it's a little too much to ask, but much of the time just feels
Much of
good,
the time.
contented, and
Yes.
joyful. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Brent, for being here. I
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me. I
Yep.
love the work you're doing. And like I said, in the world. And thank you. It was really cool to be a part of it today.
Yeah. Okay. So to close this out, I wanted to share what it looks like when you actually live with awareness of allostatic load, because this is where the concept becomes a tool. And these are some ideas of what I do. Of course, you adjust and make it applicable to your own life. We have given you plenty of ideas and tools to do that. So here is how I think about it. My body has a stress budget. And some seasons cost more, some days cost more, some activities cost more, some foods are really high and expensive in my budget, right? So instead of forcing the same routines, no matter what, I make adjustments based on what my nervous system is carrying. Now, how do you know what your nervous system is carrying? Well, you learn to pay attention. And let's talk about some of the ways. Food. Food is one of the biggest ways that I have become better at paying attention. I do intermittent fasting, and it has really helped me. I'm a huge fan of it, mostly for autophagy, and that is when you give your body a rest so that it can clean and deep clean your body. And if you're always eating, your body doesn't have a chance to do that. This is not the podcast for the details on that, but what I love about intermittent fasting is I can do it when I want, and I do it with flexibility. I choose to not intermittent fast and not add more stress when I have a busier schedule, when I'm feeling depleted. And for me, that's one of the biggest shifts with all of this is flexibility instead of rigidity and rules and, living in mindset of scarcity. And I have to do that. But more flexible. This is what I would like to do. How can I fit it into my life? With food, I also try to avoid processed food and high sugar, even when it's what my body is craving, because cravings can be a nervous system signal of I want quick comfort, but it's not necessarily what my body needs to recover, right? After a big, long workout, my body deserves to be fueled appropriately. When I'm extra stressed, my body deserves to get the nutrients and the vitamins and, just everything that it needs. Exercise is another one. I love exercising. I exercise for my mental health, but I have moved away from doing a HIIT, high intensity intervals all the time towards more weightlifting. And this has been a gradual shift. I started weightlifting more during COVID, and now I lift more often than even doing cardio and HIIT intervals. Lifting for me helps release my stress and build my strength, but it's not as hard on my system. So when I start to feel run down or getting sick, well, that's a cue to reduce my load. So earlier bedtime, skip a workout, choose a recovery, do something, but for not as long. I have also started to go walking with my husband. I don't know why we haven't made this a habit, probably because we have busy lives just like all of you. Yet for the last 6 months, we go for a walk nearly every night, probably 5 out of 7 days. We go for a walk, and it has been really good for us to connect and to talk. And we still have the same 4 kids and their sports and our jobs and our businesses and everything that we do. And yet we have seemed to shift and make it a priority. And it has been just really good. So walking is very regulating for your nervous system. It's a very good way to complete the stress cycle, and it's connecting. So walking is a good thing. I also don't eat out. I've never loved eating out, but I don't like it even more because I do notice a difference. I pay attention. Fast food, restaurant food tends to come with more oils and ingredients that leave me feeling more inflamed, more heavy, more tired. So I pay attention to that. And then there's just the moment-to-moment stuff. I intentionally build recovery into my day. I intentionally build ways to complete the stress cycle. In between my client calls, I do deep breathing, I do relaxation, gargling, cold plunging, relaxing my body on purpose at every stoplight. I am taking a mindfulness course right now, just micro moments of the diaphragmatic breathing again. And these things aren't dramatic. Nothing I'm doing is dramatic, but it's consistent, it's small, and it's helpful. Emotionally, some ways I've reduced my allostatic load is I don't let my brain spiral into an emotional pit. I address hard conversations sooner than later. I have an emotional protocol for when negative emotions show up. I say, okay, today I'm going to give attention to those negative emotions during this time. And I think about it, I write about it, I punch a punching bag over it. and I let those emotions cycle through and get out. And that really is beneficial instead of just packing them down or watching a show or scrolling, on your phone. So those are just a few of the things that I do. But what I want you to realize that the big takeaway here on these 2 episodes of allostatic load is that reducing allostatic load isn't just one magic habit. It's a pattern of listening. It's a pattern of adjusting. It's choosing recovery. It's choosing flexibility so that your body doesn't have to keep paying the cost. It doesn't have to keep carrying that load. And we can do, again, micro moments and micro steps to become healthier beings. And that is what I love doing. That's what Brent loves doing, helping people live happier, healthier lives. So reach out to either one of us if you have a question about allostatic load or if you would like coaching with anything. And thanks for listening, and we'll talk later. Every week, you're learning something new here on this podcast, and that is a powerful first step. But guess what? Information alone doesn't create transformation. True change happens when you start to think differently and shift the nervous system patterns that drive your behavior. As a coach and an emotional resiliency expert, that is the work I do. I love to walk alongside you, whether it's one-on-one, in a small group that you choose, or with your workplace team. I can help you retrain your brain and nervous system so that stress no longer runs the show. You'll find ways to connect with me in the show notes. Let's do this work together.